Well, it's not over yet, but the top U.S. commander in Iraq, Lieutenant General Stephen Townsend, says he's confident that Mosul in Iraq and Raqqa in Syria will be free from Islamic State control within months. Iraqi forces declared eastern Mosul fully liberated last month after launching a massive assault to retake the city in October, but pockets of resistance remain. Last week, soldiers fired mortars so bright they could scan the Tigris River after learning that Islamic State militants were preparing to attack eastern Mosul by boat. VOA's Heather Murdock was there and filed this report.
Kilometer away from the Tigris River last night after informants in western Mosul told them Islamic State militants were preparing boats to launch a cross-river attack. Neighborhoods like this one near the river are only sparsely populated because many people have fled the area. After more than 100 days of fighting, Iraqi forces completed the recapture of eastern Mosul about 10 days ago, but militants continue to send mortars, sniper fire, and drones across the river. Soldiers say the river is now a defense line as coalition forces prepare to attack western Mosul from points where the militants are more vulnerable. And while much of eastern Mosul comes back to life slowly, this area could remain a war zone for the foreseeable future.
And joining us now for the latest on the battle to retake Mosul, we're joined on Skype from Erbil in Kurdish Iraq by VOA Middle East correspondent Heather Murdock, who filed that report for us, and here in Washington by reporter Khalid Fatah with VOA's Kurdish service. I thank you both for joining us. Heather, I'm going to start with you. So you're talking about sporadic attacks here and there, mortar fire. How safe is Mosul right now?
Well, in the areas that are within the range of mortar and sniper fire in eastern Mosul, it is quite dangerous. It is pretty consistent that mortars are falling pretty much every day. But this is a relatively small area of eastern Mosul. The rest of eastern Mosul is pretty safe, and businesses are coming back, and people are going back to school, and the people are really happy about this. Western Mosul is entirely under the control of Islamic State militants. So what we know is only what we hear from people trapped on the other side, and that it's incredibly dangerous right now, and people are being killed, and violence, other kinds of violence is being committed against the people on a regular basis.
Khalid, let me get you into this. Why is it so difficult to remove Daesh or the Islamic State influence in that part of the world?
Well, for how difficult it's there are many reasons for that one. One of the reasons is a huge population in that area. It's about like 800 to 1 million civilians living in that area controlled by ISIS. For 2 years, ISIS built their defense lines.
It's not like the civilians actually like ISIS. I mean, they are basically held under hostage, essentially.
Well, at the beginning of the ISIS attack on Mosul, there were the people received them and they welcomed them. I'm not saying that all people, but most of the people, they received them. They thought this is the alternative for the Iraqi forces, because they don't trust Iraqi forces. The majority of the Iraqi forces built based on the sectarian basis. So this is one of the reasons they reject Iraqi forces. They thought that ISIS will be alternative, and at the end, right now they are fighting ISIS.
So Heather, to Khalid's point, Mosul really is two cities, isn't it? The east is under Iraqi control, but the western part of the city is a lot more complicated and harder to control. Why is that, Heather?
Well, there's several reasons. One reason that it's expected to make this fight really difficult is in western Mosul, there's some old neighborhoods with very small, narrow streets that are very densely populated. Also, there is, in the areas surrounding western Mosul, there is a lot of ISIS-controlled territories so they have a larger space to spread out. There was some fighting in November in an area that was similar to some parts of western Mosul, and it was a lot more dangerous and a lot more deadly than the rest of eastern Mosul, which a lot of neighborhoods fell to Iraqi forces fairly swiftly.
Yeah, a lot more places to hide there. Khalid, the Prime Minister of Northern Iraq's Kurdistan region, regional government, and I hope I'm saying his name correct, Nechirvan Barzani, is quoted as saying that Islamic State will not be eradicated simply by military operation. What does he mean by that?
That's not just his view. Actually, many experts, they express their concern. ISIS will not be defeated just militarily. There must be, after that, a political process in Iraq, in Mosul area, or the part of that, let's call it northern Baghdad. It's population, the Sunni population, Kurds there, also Shi'i. So to defeat ISIS, there must be this agreement, at least to have some kind of belief for coexistence together. The Iraqi government must work hard to bring everybody together. Also, the ISIS ideology is becoming an ideology. This ideology cannot be defeated militarily. Right. They should push the religion figure from Sunni and Shi'i to reduce the tone of their speech against each other. So if that happened, probably that ideology is going to weaken in the society at the end. That's going to be the end of the ISIS, not the military operations.
And Heather, to Khalid's point, this is really ultimately about winning hearts and minds. And Islamic State, I take it, has not done a very good job here. Now, in your reporting, you talk about what life is like really under Islamic State. And there was a story you wrote that struck me as particularly useful. Your report on the secret beauty salon, the fact that a lot of Iraqis who live there need to live two different lives. Tell me about that.
Well, what happened with that beauty salon is that when Islamic State militants came in, they shut it down, and they told the girl that she had to close her salon, and if they come again, she's going to be in a lot of trouble if she's open. But Islamic State militants were not always what they said they were, and they wanted their wives and their brides to also be made up and be beautiful. So they kept it open in a room in their house. They closed the salon. Islamic State militants took most of their stuff, but they kept some of it. They hid some of it. And people would go to the salon under the guise of that they were going to a tailor, if anyone asked, to get made up, often for holidays or for weddings, with the exception of women marrying Islamic State militants or the wives of them, and they actually came and went freely. So it was sort of this dual reality in the same place.
Bit of hypocrisy happening there on both sides. You also spoke to a captured Islamic State militant. What did he have to tell you? Does he justify Islamic State's actions in Mosul?
Well, he wouldn't justify or explain exactly why some of the extreme violence happens. He admitted to being a militant. He admitted to fighting with them in operations for the past 2.5 years. But he was captured and he is under investigation. So he's not going to tell us that he supports beheadings and stuff like this, whether he does or not. A couple things he did say, which I thought were interesting, which we have some sort of stereotypes like that. We hear a lot from civilians that Islamic State militants are often very young and uneducated. And when I asked about his education, he was almost offended. He was like, I quit school in 6th grade, but that's not why I joined. Like, I truly believed that I was serving God. And there are doctors and other educated people that work with Islamic State. So I thought that was interesting. And it was also another thing is we're told that a lot of times they're doing it for money. And for the same, he said that he made a lot more money as a farmer than he did as a militant.
So he's doing this for ideology. Khalid, I got like 30 seconds left, but Mosul is inside the Kurdish line of control. What happens to that city once Islamic State is driven out? Does it become part of Kurdish Iraq?
Mosul city, no, there are two parts. There are part of it, which is Mosul suburb. It's historically Kurdish land, and they have to have an agreement with the central government, and there is a 140 article of the Iraqi constitution. They found that way for solution. Also, there are the Arab side of the Mosul area, which is there are Sunni Shia. They have to get
it
get
sounds
along.
very complicated. It seems to me that's going to be the next
They have to
battle.
get along to find a solution for that.
There's a lot more going on there. Thank you so much for joining us, Khalid, and thank you, Heather,